All right. So we go to another question now.
Yeah.
Which is very common. I think I hear it a lot. How do I get my children to maintain a healthy diet, to eat healthy food, and
Yes.
to enjoy healthy food, to ask for healthy food over what is easily available and what is delicious?
Mhm. Well, I love this question. And I actually get this question a lot in my practice as a physician, right? Parents are worried because their toddler is eating maybe only 2 or 3 types of food, right? And over here in the United States, it's macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets is what that is. It's junk food. It's not healthy long term, but it tastes really good to your children. And so one of the first things you need to just know about your children, just from a physical perspective, is that their taste buds are still developing, right? Just because they didn't like green beans at 1 and 2 when you first gave it to them doesn't mean they won't like it the rest of their lives. Their taste buds are developing at different rates, and oftentimes their taste buds for sweet come in and develop first before taste buds for, say, salty or other flavors. And their taste buds for spice tend to come in last. So it may be just that the food that you're trying to offer them really physically, because of their anatomy at their age, does not taste good. So we have to be careful when we introduce foods that we're not forcing them to eat something that actually really tastes bad to them, because that can then set them up for not wanting to try new things in the future. However, if they're a little bit older and they're really being stubborn about trying foods and trying new things, there are a couple of tips that I tell parents. And one is that first, you don't introduce a bunch of new things all at one time. You really focus on giving them something that they like and enjoy and introducing one new healthy thing at a time in a meal. So you're not bombarding them with a whole plate full of things that they may not like, but just one thing at a time. That tends to have a higher probability of success. The second thing that I encourage parents to do is invite their children into the process of meal planning and meal preparing. Now, I recognize that that means it takes more time. And sometimes we're busy and rushed and we don't have time to let them be part of that process. But the more we invite them into that process, the higher success we'll have if we are able to take them to the market and have them look at the beautiful colors of food. Ask them, what's your favorite color? Let's see if we can find a food in your favorite color. Things like that. Inviting them in, your chance of getting them to actually consume the healthier food goes way up.
And I think this is what you've said right now, Dr. Lee, is really perfect for growing children. But even as they grow, it comes down to modeling,
Yes.
what we are eating.
Yes.
And the way that we are taking care of our health, not all of a sudden, but all the years of their life. So
it's true.
If we have our diet, we have a particular diet that we are following, and if our child is watching us and watching how we are aging beautifully and gracefully, and how we are keeping our weight in check, I think it's an automatic desire to want to follow the same, the same way that we are following, so that they are actually watching us do the right thing, watching us choose the right foods. Sometimes my daughter also comes to me and asks me, to help her to create a healthy meal, because when she was younger, she would eat things that she would like to eat, that she would prefer to eat. Although I would sneak in a few vegetables and a few a few healthy snacks, which she wouldn't know of, she's now begun to realize that the food that is on my plate is also equally delicious.
Mhm.
It's sometimes just a change of the way she looks at things.
Yes.
You
And
know,
it's
they're bombarded with so much of advertisements,
yes,
so much of colorful
packaging.
packaging.
Mhm.
Yes. And when you go to a store, everything looks more delicious than the other.
Mhm.
And that's not done in a regular market. So, you know, that it's really important to give them that understanding.
Yeah, and the flip side of that, right, is also encouraging them to get outside and engage in healthy activities. So
Yes.
it's not just the food part, that's an important part, but equally important is to provide opportunities for our kids to be able to run and jump and play and really engage themselves physically as well.
Yes.
That's important too.
Yes, because when the body is moving and when they're so enthusiastically exercising, sometimes you're so ravenously hungry that everything is delicious.
It's true.
So when they are out on camp, you'll notice that they really won't look at their plate and they'll swear that what they've eaten was the most delicious
Delicious
thing
thing.
ever. But when they are home, they have more time to think about what they want to have and they're fussy over food. So it's just about keeping them engaged, keeping their minds engaged.
Yeah, and what we really don't, I mean, I was a parent who did this too. You know, you've served a dinner and they're refusing to eat it. And so you say something like, you're going to sit there until you eat it. Or if you don't eat this, you're not eating anything. I mean, those are very, very common go-to positions with parents. But what that does, and what I learned, is that what we're doing is setting up a power struggle over an issue that we don't want to become an issue. We don't want food to be an issue for our children. We want food to be fuel. That's it. It's we don't want to be fighting about food. And so trying to take a step back and do some planning in the front end of the meal helps mitigate that power struggle at the back end, which we're trying to avoid.
And also a little bit of research on our part about food is so important, because sometimes we think that there's a certain food that may not be healthy, but it's perfectly fine. And we may think that there's a certain kind of a food that is healthy, and it's absolutely not, the combination is not correct. So sometimes our children also, we need to pay attention to what they are enjoying. And it's just the combinations we need to change in order for it to look attractive and to encourage them to eat better.
And also, I really talk about this in my book as well. This whole thing about the forbidden food theory. There were kids who would come to my home, you know, friends of my kids growing up, who knew that we had junk food in our home because I allowed my kids to have junk food in moderation, you know, a little bit of junk food here, a little bit of junk food there, not as a reward. We don't reward our kids with food, but just, you know, there's access to it. And there would be children who would come to my house to have play dates, and they would raid my pantry because they had no access to any of that kind of food at their home. And it set them up for this sort of unnatural desire to have as much as they could get. It was like a scarcity thing for them. And so really, you know, and like I said, I go way more in depth about this, but we want to be careful that we don't do that with our children, that we absolutely forbid, you know, an ice cream here or there or something like that. So it can become a complex issue, but it doesn't need to be.